Southward Korean lead Luna Jae-in is each a tactful genie or a communistic set on destructive his nation, and US CEO Donald Trump card is each a wizard of confrontation or a pledge in a more than roundabout play, depending on who you say to. But it is the some artist in the legend, Kim Jong-un, the just one who has yet to do a straight declaration, who may fair be the largest considerable gamer in the largest emergency of policy gambles. Of the time he stretched an obvious olive tree branches to the southward in his New Year communication to the warm delegations to Pyeongchang for the winter Spartakiada, it became precise how Kim Jong-un had assimilated the largest settle applied of promotion. But the hazard there belongs to both of Luna Jae-in and Donald Trump card. In a position wherever no one can complain single skill of the story, out of a precise output policy, and while down there are so lot terminology for both of successful and fail, a lot is at share. The staggering standard of public diplomacy and a rage of visits among polar and southward has now brought, it seems. Human beings are inviting the polar Korean allure unpleasant. I in fact believe the is a southward Korean allure unpleasant. The is thing CEO Luna Jae-in obviously requested, John Delury of Yonsei College told to me, though up the negotiations were announced. Mr. Luna knew his envoys would include to remove the speech denuclearization of Mr. Kim while they attended Pyongyang. He as well knew possessing two of his top standard by the government ministers looking cozy in the polar Korean lead would not go downward so in Washington or Tokyo. But it was cost the hazard. The US would not include deliberate speaking to the communistic country out of how meet. His selected convention delegates got which they necessary. The southward Korean lead is as well trying the part of fair brokerage, processing Mr. Trump card and Mr. Kim at the identical period. He is selecting his speech thoroughly and compliance his cards shut to his trunk time flatter such who answer to the searchlight. Sanctions regime will remain in location, Mr. Luna had told over, and Mr. Trump card has now affirmed how. CEO Luna was really lot worried on nuke risk of warfare. Kim Jong-un was in the identical position. We were listening of the likes of the US Sen Lindsey Graham how lives will be lose above there. Donald Trump card's heterodox and volatile management had both of Korean leaders concerned on the capacity of war options. The US has ever kept how the constant denuclearization of polar Korea is the ending. Though in all the surprises up to the spot, few trust Mr. Kim would accept to how so if they don't reach how which options does Trump card include. So is Luna Jae-in, and really Donald Trump card, creature manipulated by a polar Korea that has fooled the planet up? By hanging up the US one day once again denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and stand still on nuke and rocket tests, Kim seeks to loosen sanctions regime, before empt US war before emption, and state the planet in receiving polar Korea as a legal nuke country, says Professor Lee Sung-yoon of the Fletcher High School of Law and Public Diplomacy, Tufts College. For Mr. Trump card that could be on one of the boldest and largest historical moves a US lead has done in overseas relations. If the gambling plan of Mr. Trump card could letter of credit oneself as the CEO who graded out polar Korea. His authority has had really few victories, in spite promise his voters down there would so lot winner. He believes his maximal blood pressure policy and his job to get China on party and assist compress Pyongyang economically is work. Reporters say he accidentally aforementioned in the White's Building press briefing chamber how he hoped they would offer him letter of credit for Kim Jong-un's propose. His voters surely will. Professor Robert E. Kelly at Busan College in Southward Korea tweeted, Trump card doesn't research or though recite. He tends to fly wild off scenario. And may tool down there's nearly no period for all the personnel preparatory required. Pyongyang has been game the play for many decades. Mr. Trump card is new to it. He may see a big win on the skyline, but his art of the transactions volume will not be the manual he is necessary to transactions in Kim Jong-un. For Mr. Luna the is on story and it is as well private. He play a portion in early attempts to conduct negotiations in polar Korea as head of personnel to CEO Roh Lo-hyun while he met Mr. Kim's dad, Kim Jong-il, in 2007. How was the recent period the leaders of the two Koreas detained a summit conference? A Sputnik start by Pyongyang ended the negotiations. By later about $1 of aid had been shipped polar for the politics of betrothal. Critics trust how cash helping to speed the arms program. Possessing unsuccessful one day up, Mr. Luna is hard to fool the job he begun, says Do-Yeon Kim, a elder comrade at the Korean Peninsular Message Board. Same's mainly next the identical plan as his two permissive predecessors. He's precisely the type of item he would wish to choose up and go on. As a son of refugees of the polar, Mr. Luna is as well aware of the effects of dispute on the peninsular. His parents fled polar Korea on board a UN delivery vessel in 1950 at the begin of the Korean War near thousands of some refugees. He said reporters for his Pole campaigning, "My dad fled of the polar, loathing communism. I myself loathe the communistic polar Korean framework. How doesn't indicate I should let the human beings in the polar afflict by an depressing mode." CEO Luna has recognized down there are existing barriers front. He is operating consumer expectations and so lot can go incorrect. Do-Yeon Kim believes down there is a top likelihood how at the end of the negotiations trial, all parties will failure, and polar Korea will solve it once to hold its nuke arms. And still, thou fair dong ti aware. I dong ti believe he's always a lose reason, in malice of all the doubts and skepticism all parties should go in precise eyes, but conduct negotiations difficult. CEO Luna's adoption ratings took a hit for the Winter Spartakiada following key integration the females ice hockey crew in players of the polar and met a general of Pyongyang who had been charged of masterminding fatal attacks on southward Koreans, although they include with rebounded. He may afflict politically if the fails but perhaps for him, the is not on counting policy points. The is which he said period ammunition depot recent year while he was president applicant. My mom is the just one of her household who fled to the southward. She is 90-year ancient. Her junior sibling is yet in the polar live. My mom's recent desire is to see her once again. These negotiations are a enormous gambling in a communistic country that is difficult to recite. But if, fair if, he helps drag it off it may bring the risk of nuke war and he could win oneself a Nobel World Award. If all fails, it is behind to confrontation.